Welcome to TV, Tennessee Valley Church. Today we are at the wonderful community farm, The People's Patch, near the campus of Alabama A&M. It's a partnership of Madison County Commission and Alabama A&M University. You'll hear more about that in a few minutes. We're continuing the series that began with Abraham 4 weeks ago and will take us all the way to Easter. We ended last week with Joshua and the people of God crossing the Jordan River westward from what is now Jordan into the land of promise. The people of God settled in, having to fight for the land they would occupy. Following the death of Joshua for about 400 years, God's people were led by judges. Not judges as we think of judges, but national leaders who provided political and spiritual leadership. Some of the most well-known judges were Deborah, Gideon, and Samuel. First, Deborah. Deborah lived and led in a world completely dominated by males. In Deborah's day, a woman was known for who she was married to, not for who she was. Yet Deborah was chosen by God to be a judge, a political, spiritual, national leader of His people. She led courageously, effectively. In a day when so many still question the competence and qualifications of women to lead, including in churches, we all owe a lot to Deborah. Now Gideon. Gideon wasn't a stereotypical leader. He wasn't a take charge kind of guy. But one day a figure walked up and took a seat where Gideon was working. It was an angel, a messenger from God Himself. And the angel spoke to Gideon, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Now Gideon is known for being an ordinary man who did extraordinary things. There's a line in the movie, The Imitation Game, about an unexpected hero during World War II. Sometimes it's the people no one can imagine anything of who do the things that no one can imagine. No one imagined anything of Gideon, but by the power of God's Spirit, God did things no one could imagine. Now to Samuel. There was a woman in Ramah named Hannah. Hannah wanted children badly. She cried and pleaded with God for a child. "If you will give me a son," she told God, "I will give him back to you for your service." God answered her prayers. As soon as her little boy Samuel was old enough to leave home, Hannah brought Samuel to the worship place at a place called Shiloh. When we do a child family dedication at our church, I almost always say, like Hannah dedicated Samuel. Years ago, I sat down with a young family at Wednesday night supper at our church in Richmond, Virginia. On the following Sunday, we were going to dedicate their baby boy. Before I could say anything, their wonderful little girl, the baby boy's big sister, maybe age 3, said to me with great excitement, "On Sunday, we're going to donate our little brother to the church." Well, Hannah kind of did donate Samuel. She dedicated him and kind of donated him. She prayed that God would use Samuel and then left him to grow up under Eli's tutelage there at Shiloh. When Samuel came of age, he became Israel's judge, the political and spiritual leader of Israel. During the period of the Judges, the people of Israel lived a recurring cycle of rebellion, getting conquered by their enemies, then repenting, and then being restored. They tired of living under the threat of their enemies, but instead of being faithful to their covenant with God, they blamed the system. So the people of Israel said, "We want a king. All the other countries have a king. We want one too." They blamed their political, military, and spiritual problems on the system, on the people in charge. They didn't accept any responsibility. "We need a king," they said. So God said to Samuel, "Give them a king." Samuel was the last of the judges. With him came the transition from judges to kings, beginning with Saul. But before we get to the kings, let's talk about Ruth. The first verse of the book of Ruth reads, "In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land." Due to that famine, Elimelech and Naomi fled with their 2 sons from Bethlehem to the land of Moab in search of food. Then, as the family was settling in and the situation was settling down, Naomi's husband, Elimelech, her companion of many years, died. Life went on and Naomi's 2 sons married. But then, within a short time, both her sons died. Naomi decided to return to Bethlehem. At that point, one daughter-in-law decided to go home to her parents, but the second, Ruth, decided to stay with her mother-in-law and to embrace Naomi's God as her own. Naomi and Ruth settled in Bethlehem, and Ruth went to work in the fields, gleaning, meaning she gathered the loose barley and wheat which was left after others passed by, gathering the primary harvest. It was something of a social services program. That story, by the way, makes me appreciate a community farm like this one. As Ruth walked along gathering loose barley, Boaz, the owner of the field where she was working, noticed her. Boaz began to ask around about this new woman gleaning in the field. That's sort of how I met Carrie, and I told you this a couple of years ago, my wife. I saw her around campus down at Samford, and then one day I was in the car with one of my friends, David George, when I saw her drive by. "Follow that car," I said. We trailed her until she parked and went into her dorm. When she disappeared, I went over to her car and looked in the window. Today, they call that stalking, but I wasn't stalking. That was romantically motivated research. There in the front seat lay one of her notebooks. On the front of the notebook was her name, Carrie Williams. So I went back to my room, looked her up in the campus directory. That was before cell phones and all that, and I called her. It took me a year to convince her to go out with me. Bless her heart, she missed out on a whole year that she could have been dating me. Well, Boaz asked around about Ruth until he finally found out who she was. He approached her and introduced himself and said, "You can glean wheat in my field anytime." Ruth and Boaz eventually were married. Sometime later, they were blessed with a baby boy. Boaz, by the way, has often been seen as a type, a pattern, a foreshadowing, a hint of Jesus. He loved a woman whose future was bleak and whose resources were few, an outsider. He redeemed her shattered life. In Hebrew culture, he was called the kinsman redeemer. Boaz points to the ultimate redeemer, the Lord Jesus. In the closing scene of this marvelous drama, Naomi's friends were standing around as Naomi rocked her precious grandson. By the way, that baby's name was Obed. When he grew up, he had a son of his own and named him Jesse. Jesse grew up and had a son of his own named David. We know him as King David, the most beloved king of Israel. And of course, we know who is a descendant of David, the Lord Jesus, born in Bethlehem, where the book of Ruth begins and ends. Now, to the kings. One day, Samuel saw a young man named Saul, and he knew this was God's choice for king. Saul was a natural-born leader. Saul had it all. And Saul proved to be, indeed, an able leader. But alas, Saul ultimately didn't work out so well. He began with a bang and ended with a thud. Saul got too full of himself and eventually began to ignore God's instructions. And so God chose another man to be king of Israel. But God didn't wait until Saul was off the scene. When Samuel saw David, just as when he'd seen Saul, Samuel knew David would be the next king. Saul was still on the throne, but Samuel went ahead and named David as the next ruler. And then that young man David went down to the valley of Elah and killed the giant Goliath. There was a big parade in David's honor, and the ladies loved him. Saul eventually threw himself on his sword and died in a pool of his own blood and jealous self-pity. Soon, David would be installed as king. When I come back, I'm going to talk about the reign of King David And we'll focus particularly on one of his Psalms, an eerily detailed prediction about the death of Jesus.
Blessed are the poorest ones, for heaven comes to where they are in you, in you. Blessed are the ones who mourn, for comfort comes to find them all in you, in you. Those who seek will be made right, they will be filled and lifted high in you, in you. Blessed are the merciful, for mercy will be shown to them by you, by you. Blessed are the ones who call your name. Blessed are the ones you save. You bless the pure in heart. We will see our God. We will see our God. Those who long for making peace, they will become the children of our God, of our God. Blessed are the meek, for they receive the earth and all that's found in you, in you. Blessed are the ones who call your name. Blessed are the ones you save. Oh, you bless the pure in heart. We will see our God. We will see our God. Just to know you, just to love you. What more can I ask for? What more can I ask for? If just to know you, if just to love you. What more can I ask for? What more can I ask for? If just to know you, if just to love you. What more can I ask for? What more can I ask for? Just to know you, just to love you. What more can I ask for? What more can I ask for? Oh, blessed are the ones who call your name. Blessed are the ones you save. Oh, you bless the pure in heart. We will see our God. We will see our God. Oh, we will see our God. We will see our God. And persecuted we will stand, for our reward is heaven here and now, still to come.
The People's Patch is a community farm close to the campus of Alabama A&M on Meridian Street. Jason Andra is the harvest manager here. Thank you for letting us be here today.
Thanks for coming.
Jason, what is the purpose of the People's Patch?
So the People's Patch prime directive is to provide food to address the issue of food scarcity to our community. The People's Patch grows and we care for the fields, and it's just open to the public to come and harvest.
And why is that important?
We want to have healthy food readily available, but we also pride ourselves on keeping our pesticides to a minimum. It's important to know, where your food's coming from for safety reasons, but we're also trying to promote education too, so our children know where their food comes from. It's important in any area, but especially located where we are, there's not a lot of fresh produce available. There's so many prepackaged foods that have preservatives and other additives to give them a long shelf life. But to have fresh, healthy food free of charge for people to come and harvest here, that's what we pride ourselves on. About 40 years the project's been going on, but we're really trying to vamp it up and raise awareness here in the last year or so.
And your county commissioners had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, so Commissioner Edwards has brought me on board to manage the fields, but also to use social media and just really get the word out and let people know that we're here and they're welcome to come harvest.
And what a great cooperation, because Alabama A&M, Agriculture Mechanical University, so this is also a learning ground for students.
Yeah, exactly. So the university has some agriculture classes, but we're also working with their urban planning class. They're helping to develop their skills and help us learn how to do things in the garden, help it evolve to be more functional for the community.
How many people use this?
Oh goodness, well it varies depending on the season, but on a slow day in the winter we may only see 2 or 3 people, but in the summer and the busier seasons we'll see 100 people or more in a day.
And what crops do you have here? We've seen signs with greens, which are my favorite.
Yeah, so that always changes throughout the seasons. You'll have spring crops, winter crops, summer crops. Of course, summer's our busiest time, but your spring crops are going to be things like peas, lettuce, turnips, collards. But then we'll get into the summer where we have corn, tomatoes, squash, purple whole peas, and we try and have a variety of different things for people to pick when they come out to see us.
And you've got about 25, 26 acres here and plans for the future.
We've got about 25 or 26 acres we're actively farming, but we're wanting to introduce fruit trees, shrubs, and vines, and we're even adding some nature trails and some outdoor classrooms to the farm. Very interactive with the community at many age levels. And even for recreation and exercise, for instance, the cross-country team uses this as their training grounds. The gardens are open 7 days a week from sun up to sundown. We do have some fenced-in areas that are open on weekdays from about 7:30 in the morning to we close the gates about 2:30 in the afternoon.
Okay, well thank you, Jason.
All right.
The People's Patch, close to Alabama A&M on Meridian Street.
Saul was dead. David was king. Under King David, the nation of Israel reached its apex. Israel was respected by its neighbors. They enjoyed peace and prosperity. David would be the king against which all other kings are judged. His star, the Star of David, is still the emblem of the nation of Israel and graces the Israeli flag. David had his flaws, to be sure. He committed adultery with his neighbor Bathsheba. His family made dysfunctional sound like an understatement. But he was a great king and an inspiring poet. The Psalms of David are more than divinely inspired poetry. In David's Psalms, we see hints, foreshadowings of the Messiah. Take Psalm 22, for example. Scorned by everyone, despised by the people, all who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads. He trusts in the Lord, they say. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. Later in that same psalm, they pierce my hands and feet. All my bones are on display. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garments. Now, David couldn't have known what he was describing, but God somehow inspired David to write about the crucifixion of Jesus that would come 1,000 years later. David's words in Psalm 22 foreshadow the shame, indignity, and humiliation Jesus suffered at the cross. David accurately spoke of the Messiah who 1,000 years later would experience a degrading death at Calvary. And if we were to stop there with David's descriptions of the cross, the story would be disheartening. sad to the point of being overwhelming. In fact, there were several points in the story of God and His people that were disheartening. A number of times when the outlook was bleak, when hope was hard to find. But remember, the story in this series culminates on Easter with the celebration of the resurrection. As followers of Jesus, we are Easter people. I'm guessing the most commonly quoted line from pulpits on Easter in the last several years is this: "It's Friday, but Sunday's coming." That was the title of a sermon preached many years ago, and it has been repeated, that phrase has, and appropriately so, thousands of times. It's Friday, but Sunday's coming. The preacher said, it was Friday, and my Jesus was dead on the tree. But that was Friday, and Sunday's coming. It was Friday, and Mary was crying her eyes out. The disciples were running in every direction like sheep without a shepherd. But that was Friday, and Sunday's coming. This preacher repeatedly pounded home the message, it's Friday, but Sunday's coming, until finally at the end of his message, he just yelled out at the top of his lungs, it's Friday, and everybody in the room yelled back in one voice, Sunday's coming. In our own lives, there are dark times too, dark Fridays, if you will, and those are the times when we Easter people need to remember, as that preacher put it, it's Friday, but Sunday's coming.
How great this love, oh, it's moving on my mountains. This perfect love, it's casting out my fear. How great this love, oh, it welcomes me like family. And anywhere I go, it meets me there. 'Cause He is good, He is God. And what I earn, it's not what I got. He is just, yet oh so kind. What I deserve, it's not what I find. What more could I say about my God's love? How great this love, oh, it's faithful through my failure. This trusted love is with me till the end. How great this love, oh, it's closer than a brother. This is love, He died so I could live. He is good, He is God. What I earn, it's not what I got. He is just, yet oh so kind. What I deserve, it's not what I find. What more could I say about it? My God is love. He is love. I know my God is love. I know my God is love. This is enough to know my God is love. I know my God is love. I know my God is love. This is enough to know my God is love. I know my God is love. I know my God it's not what I find. What more could I say about my God is love? What more could I say about my God is love? What more could I say about my God is love?
Thank you so much for watching. It is an honor, and I mean that, to have you as part of our extended community. We know that there are people who watch who are new believers. We know that there are people who watch who have been followers of Jesus for a long time. We know there are people who watch who are just considering the Christian faith. Wherever you are in that, we are delighted that you watch. We really are. And we think this might be helpful. Things I wish I'd learned in Sunday school, a study of the basics of the Christian faith. Whether you might want a refresher, or maybe you would like to sit in the privacy of your own home or room or wherever you are and consider these basics of the Christian faith. This might be helpful. So we want to send you one, no cost of course, no obligation, just email publications@fbchsv.org, publications@fbchsv.org. They'll send you a digital copy, and you can use it however it might be helpful. We just want to say thank you. Thank you again for being part of our extended community.